Please. The seat is yours. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? We're having a very hectic agenda, very productive one. First of all, welcome to your home. This is the home of sustainable agriculture of the Americas. We represent nothing but the most important continent exporting food, the most important continent based on natural resources. It's a huge responsibility, especially looking at the future, considering that we are at the same time, unfortunately, the most vulnerable region in terms of climate crisis. Would like to welcome once again to all our partners. This is the result of a public and private alliance. So it's a privilege for me to gather here with experts, stakeholders, and advocates who recognize that the future of agriculture is both a critical challenge but also an extraordinary opportunity. Jack Bobo, who is a professor of UCLA and also formerly a professor of Nottingham University, has emphasized that in the next 25 years we will see more changes or equal level of changes than in the previous 10,000 years. So the future is right now, and we need to define the future that we want, the future that we deserve, instead of the future that we should wait. No, we have to act in a proactive way, defining our own agenda. Let me just emphasize that looking at 2050, we're going to have 1,200,000,000 more inhabitants, more middle class, more big cities, as my friend Professor Ratan Lal always repeat, we're going to have more big cities, and each big city, represented by 10 million inhabitants or more, is requiring 6,000 tons of food per day. So, no options. We have to produce more food with less nature. And this is something very important. Looking at the future, we need to have a new generation of policies recognizing the new challenges that agriculture is facing. We have to take advantage of the new technologies, especially to the small farmers. In Latin America and the Caribbean, we have 17.5 farmers, especially small and medium farmers. They are the soul of the rural areas, and we have to try to create the conditions for empower them. And last but not least, we need for more innovative financing mechanisms in order to concrete these ideas. So as a Director General of AICA, this is a very crucial matter. I have instructions from agriculture ministers. They decided in October last year to request the executive area of AICA to work more actively in the future of agriculture. So this is a very important meeting. So I would like to greet and recognize the presence once again of Dr. Ratan Lal, the most important scientist committed with soil generation, working for the Ohio State University, our friend from CAF, the Minister of Belize, thank you, and the Secretary General of World Farmer Organization, and my friend also, Lloyd Day, the moderator. So I'll give you the floor. Thank you, and go ahead.
Thank you, Director General. Can you nod and let me know if this is working? Okay, it sounds like it's working for you. It's not working for me, so I took my headphones off. But anyways, thanks to everyone, especially I would say to Minister Mai and for Dr. Rottenlal, who have been on stage all day today, the first day of our panel here at the Home for Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas. We're talking about the future. Thank you. We're talking about the future of agriculture. And as the Director General quoted our friend from another university, sorry, Ratan, from UCLA and the University of Nottingham, Jack said that the next 30 years are probably the most important 30 years in the history of agriculture. We have to get to feeding an additional 2 billion people and also deal with the existential crisis of our climate that's changing. How do we produce more food and do it in a sustainably intensive way? So that's a big challenge. But as we know from the past, as the Director General said, farmers have a history and science has a history of helping us achieve and surpass the challenges that are dealt us. We've seen over the past 100 years how we moved from 200 people to 8 billion people, and we have more food using less land than we would have ever thought possible. So agriculture can do it. So this panel, we're going to ask each of you for your thoughts on this. I have specific questions, but you can really just think about the future of agriculture and what it has to deal with you. I'll let the minister drink a little bit first. You're first on the docket, but if you want to rest a little bit, I can understand. So you've already talked today about how Belize is experiencing the impacts of climate change on its food system. And so in your view, what areas should receive more attention from multilateral forums in the future to support resilience and adaptation efforts to countries like Belize to deal with climate change?
Thank you very much. Are you hearing me? Because this is not working. Okay. But when I was studying university, in one of my soil science classes, we read one of the texts, and it said, in the 1950s, experts believed because of the growing population, the rate of growth, and that our staple crops, our most consumed staple crops, wheat, the yields were constant, but the population was growing, that by 2020s, we would have run out of food if we would not have done something. Simmet and Siat, the Green Revolution and discovery of urea fertilizer changed that. The problems we faced then are certainly not the problems we're facing now. Climate change, like my colleague said, has multiplied our problems. And sitting here and analyzing, how do we move forward in the future? And very importantly, I believe, in my view, one of the first things that has to come to pass is sound education of the young people of the future. The second is that there be strong policy support for agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and climate-smart agriculture. Third, there must be regulations in place. Go back to policy. In my country, the leasing of lands for farming, the policy was, I will lease this land to you as government for 30 years, but if you don't develop the land, I will cancel the lease because you're not producing on it. Who said that there was no production going on? The trees on the land are producing oxygen, but it was never thought about before. So saying now that you'll take away the land because it's not producing, now we see was a serious blunder. Those lands today should remain in forests if we were to think 20 years ago. So that policy has to change. In terms of regulation, there must be regulations to clearly define that we cannot remove all the trees. There must be trees left. If you have 100 hectares of land, there must be a percentage that you leave in forest, and that has to be regulated. There must be continuous research and education. If it was not for cement and CIAT, we would not have had the increase in yields of the most important cereals that we consume in the world. So research and education is important. But today, again, technology plays a very important role in today's agriculture. I believe, in my view, that if we apply these 6 points that I mentioned to you, we'll be in a better position. But last, there must be incentives. No farmer who wants to help mitigate the effects of climate change can do it for free. My colleague mentioned earlier, farmers are losing today on one hand, but yet we are asking them to do something about climate change at a cost. Who's going to foot the cost? There must be incentives so that the farmers can continue to help to mitigate the effects of climate change. Agriculture should not be a problem. It should be a part of the solution.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for a long day of being on a lot of panels. And we really appreciate having your perspective and your expertise. I was on a panel, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago in Iowa, and I had kind of the same 4 points, just talking about the bioeconomy. First, you need investment. Then you need research. Then you need a policy framework around all of that, which will lead to the innovation. And you mentioned a really important point. If you have all that, you need incentives so that farmers can apply it, because they're not going to do it easily. It costs a lot of money. The margins are very thin. So we thank you for your perspective. Dr. Law, you've been on stage all day too. We appreciate your being here and the expertise you bring. When you're thinking about the future, and you're being the world's preeminent soil scientist, and we have a situation of soil degradation everywhere, what's the future? How can we restore our soils and help those soils be productive enough to help us yield enough to feed the world, while also maintaining, and improving our environment? Can we do it? What's your prognosis?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I honestly feel that agriculture has a very bright future. Very bright future indeed. I also repeat what was said. More changes will happen in agriculture between 2025 and 2050 than probably have happened last 10,000 years since the agriculture began. And we will see those changes. And one of the change which really not many people agree with what I say is going to be produce more from less. And when I say more from less, I know many people saying 500 million hectare more land, bring it to feed 10 billion people. We actually produce enough food already, 3.2 billion tons of food grains that can feed 10 billion people, but 40% of it underestimatedly is wasted. So if we know how, that means out of 3 billion tons, more than 1 billion ton reach no stomach, human or animal, it's wasted. So that's one problem which we should really have a very high priority. We spend all the resources to produce and then waste, and that's not acceptable. The second part that you mentioned, and which I'll come back to, that why land should be returned back to nature. 40% of all land is degraded by erosion, by salinization, by depletion of organic matter content, by imbalance of plant nutrients, by soil compaction, by soil crusting, one farmer or the other, one form of degradation or the other. So though degraded land must be restored rather than opening new forest for new land. That's keep degrading and opening new forest, that's not a wise policy. So that has to stop. And from that perspective, right now, we have 5 billion hectare of land under agriculture, 1.5 billion under cropland, 3.7 billion hectare under grazing land. If we manage the food properly, if we can keep the nutrient deficit, such as in sub-Saharan Africa, correctly, if we apply drip irrigation, sub-fertigation, we should return 750 million hectare of cropland, which is marginal otherwise, back to nature by 2100. We must have a timetable. Out of 3,700 million hectare under grazing land, 1,500 million hectare is more than plenty. I know some land can only be used for grazing land, correct. But 3,700 hectare, no. So by 2100, we should have 2,500 million hectare land under agriculture rather than 5,000 million hectare now. And that's a policy. To that means respect for the farming profession. Farming profession farmers, they should be paid for ecosystem services. And at this point, I'm not sure market is still ready for that. Pay them for ecosystem services, societal value of carbon until the market develops. $50 per credit of carbon, for example, sequestration. And I think the other part is the education. My suggestion was children alphabet book should be environment oriented. I think agreement that ICA put out was a very good, excellent choice. So that part is. Finally, I think I want to mention one thing. We always talk about peace is a political problem. Peace is a scientific problem. A hungry stomach does not understand the meaning of peace. So when people do not get basic necessity of life, peace has no meaning. And scientific issue is how to manage soil properly, how to make sure you have safe, adequate, nutritious food, 17 micronutrients. They must come from soil. And only then peace will happen.
Thank you, Dr. Law. I think Norman Borlaug said you can't have peace on an empty stomach. So that's a very good perspective. It sounds like we have all the answers. We just need to implement that. And that's really the job of Andrea here and the World Farmers Organization. Andrea, how do you see governments working on the new NDCs? And what is WFO doing to work with farmers to influence those NDCs so that farmers are given credit, so that farmers are supported, so that farmers place front and center on the financing for dealing with climate change and climate issues? And how is the WFO helping to lead and be a voice for farmers on those issues?
Thank you very much. And just 1 second. It's paying to hear your own voice. Huh? So thank you very much. The World Farmer Organization is a member-based organization that try to bring together and manage to bring together the global north and global south. Sorry to abuse of this terminology that doesn't resemble anymore what is the world today. But we bring together national farmers organization of family farmer from all the continent with one goal, is to voice their voice where need to be heard of. And this is the space that we feel that the voice of a farmer is not always heard in the proper manner. You have mentioned things that resonate a lot, all of you actually, with the World Farmer Organization. There is a need to rebuild, and what we are going to rebuild. We're going to rebuild a covenant between farmers and consumer, between urban and rural. Urbanization is a trend, but there is a challenge of understanding where food comes from and what are farmers. Farmers are economic actors. They are proud members of their community. They are asked and they are up to the challenge of produce more with less, so be in the sustainability triangle of being financially sustainable, environmentally sustainable, but also social sustainable. Education, that Your Excellency just mentioned, is at the center also of our value. But few things are still not working. Of the climate financing that goes to farmers, and especially small farmer or small-sized farmer, is negligible amount. The NDCs, when we have interviewed and validate with our members from all over the world how was their engagement, was still not enough in several countries. Only 4 out of 36 of our national farm organization has been meaningfully engaged at national level to define the NDCs. Next year, we will have dialogues and we will really hope, and WFO is working at the farmer constituency here, but also at the different other venue and table where we are sitting to make sure that the voice of the farmer is heard. Especially, we are looking at the year of a triple nexus of COP. We have biodiversity, now we have the UNFCCC, so climate discussion. We'll have in a few weeks from now the combat desertification. The moment will be to bring all this message together. The moment will be to engage along the value chain in the agri-food systems, farmer organization, private sector, under the umbrella of government that are looking at a new relationship, healthy relation with farmers' organization. There where we think that sits an important moment to foster this dialogue at national level. We have the goal and the ambition to also support our farmer organization to grow. And that's also another point when you were mentioning about education, there is also capacity building of national farmer organization that should be placed an objective to make sure that they are able to engage meaningfully with the government. In this transformation that the climate challenge is placing on farmer, innovation is also at the center, research and innovation. Farmers are ready, they believe in science-based solution, they believe in farmer-driven solution, but they want to be heard. There cannot be, there is no silver bullet, no solution once fit all, but there is also no top-down approach. That has been the past, and we have seen where it brought us today. The bottom-up, that means sitting around the table with all the actors, listening what farmers need, it's the starting point, not the ending point, the starting point. Has been mentioned agro-ecosystem service. It resonates a lot with me. I had a PhD in agrobiodiversity conservation in rice field, some years ago. Let's not go down memory lane about age. But I was studying about agro-ecosystem service with Gleesman, and still we have lack payment for that. But there is carbon market that is working. We do lack a benchmark of a global refill of how one equivalent CO2 worth, so to protect farmer, but that shows us that there is a possibility there to pay for something that is not pure production. And please also stop to call farmers producer. It's tempting in some object, but farmers are a bit more than producer. They are member of the community, they are member of a society. As you said, rightfully so, Minister, and I will conclude here, they have solution. They just need to be heard, but they also need to be supported. If you are in the red, you cannot go green. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and it's great to have you here. It's been great working with the World Farmers Organization for many years now. As we were building up toward the Food Systems Summit, Louise and I were on a lot of calls together in which I reiterated the Director General's 3 premises often when it comes to these international discussions. The first point is that farmers need to be part of the discussion. They weren't. The UN One Planet Network came to ICA. They had a discussion about the transformation of food systems. There wasn't a single farmer there. There wasn't a single Minister of Agriculture. There wasn't a single food company. How can you talk about food system transformation without the actors in the in the whole food chain. It was, and so that really led us on this path with you to ensure that farmers were part of that discussion, to talk that science had to be the foundation of public policy, and that agriculture is viewed as part of the solution. And that's why we're here. That's why we've been here for 3 years with you and many of our friends here in this room to talk about agriculture being part of the solution. So thank you for being with us. Ignacio Lorenzo, an old friend, not so old, but a longtime friend, who has been a negotiator on the climate change discussions for the government of Uruguay, and a consultant to us at ICA to help us with a whole range of products around the hemisphere and how our climate change team works, and now the climate change lead for CAF. Everyone wants to talk to you. You're the guy with money. How are you going to help us get financing to the farmers to deal with these kind of things? I know it's not easy, but it's all on you right now. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lloyd, and thank you also, Manuel, Katia, for the invitation. We're really honored to join this panel at the ICA Pavilion. Really, really happy. So tough question indeed. First, let me just address a little bit how we think of agriculture and the work of agriculture in CAF. Being a regional development bank, we started working on agriculture more recently than others in the ecosystems of multilateral development banks. So that implied two things. First is that our team is a small team for agriculture that we have. And so one issue is that we understood that to be able to provide funding and to be present in the region, we needed to create alliances. And one of the most important one is with ICA in terms of knowledge and understanding, technical cooperation on how can we design better products that are more aligned with the needs and the understanding of the diverse agricultural sector in the region. And the second thing is that also our team is embedded within the environment team. So the way that we think of agriculture is from an environmental perspective, that we think in terms of the future of agriculture discussion, that this is quite relevant for the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. The relationship that there is in terms of agriculture, in terms of vulnerabilities, in terms of mitigation, in terms of biodiversity, with what we have in the region is intrinsic. So we can see there somehow threats of these solutions as Manuel has indicated in the beginning. So we can build, for example, of one idea that we just presented last year in Dubai, and we have also presented in Cali a couple of weeks ago, is this idea of strategic ecosystems for the region, where we, of course, have the Amazons, but we also have many others. And I will get to one example of that may leave us some ideas of what could be the new arrangements for funding in this transformation. Is the bioma Pampa in South America. We were discussing this last week in the Sustainable Livestock Conference. You were there, Loy, as well, in Punta del Este. So what we say is that these strategic ecosystems can give you clues of what would be the best investments and the best way to produce and to have these maximum outputs, including and incorporating the best of nature and the resources that our region has. So on that example, we are working with regional banks, and this is also something that CAF usually does in these alliances. It's not working directly, but together with other financial institutions and other institutions to deliver better in a more comprehensive approach. So we work with several first degree banks, local banks, regional banks that are the main financiers of local agriculture. And you have a huge ecosystem of local financiers. And if you see green finance in terms of climate funds or the MDBs has just reached a small part. But if you see, there is a very important push of local finance that can also be upgraded, has more possibility to be enhanced together with this additional finance. So working with these banks in the bioma Pampa, we figured out that we can work on a special incentive, as Minister have indicated, working with biodiversity credits, that can allow for the livestock producers to have a better management of the rangelands, including more production of meat, including a better taking care of the biodiversity there, the soil, and that can also allow for an additional incentive to be paid by markets in terms of conservation. So in a way, we're trying to build these alliances, carbon markets as well, to bring additional income to the equation of the producers. And also, there is an underlying assumption that the way that livestock can be produced in this particular ecosystem is that if you also conserve biodiversity, you are also more resilient to drought, and you can also reduce your emissions. So in a way, it's a triple positive impact that in a way makes the whole sustainability issues beyond just the environment, including also social and financial, for the livestock farmers in that particular region. So in a way, we try to form alliances with the people who knows, the people are on the ground, to provide additional finance, differentiated finance, innovative finance that can deliver to these solutions in terms of incentives as the discussion, and definitely huge opportunities in the region to foster this kind of specific financial designs that can be better for those farmers to enhance their production and also be more resilient.
Thank you, Ignacio. I'd like to kind of build off what you just said in terms of conservation and in terms of carbon. Last year at the COP, we had a meeting of the ministers, where we talked about voluntary carbon markets. There's a lot of uncertainty around that. There's a lot of people selling snake oil to farmers in terms of, I'm going to buy your carbon, I'm going to set it at this price, you're going to have all this extra money. There's no clear path, chart, for how that's going to go. And maybe I'd like to ask all four of you, and we'll just go down the line. I'll let someone volunteer, and we'll just move the microphone back and forth. Where do you see carbon markets helping your farmers, hurting your farmers, posing challenges to government ministries and how you deal with it, and how you perform a standard so that your farmers know that they're not getting ripped off, that they're getting the value for their land and their value for their techniques and their best management practices? This is a real challenge, and I don't think farmers nor governments are really quite ready for all of this. I know that Ratan has the answers, and so maybe we'll start with you, and from your answers, maybe we'll just go down the line and talk about how are we going to deal with this? There's still a lot of uncertainty. How do we make that a lot more clear?
Thank you, Lord. You certainly asked some very good questions. Chicago Climate Exchange started in 1999. I won't give the name of the person who started it. And it was 99 cents a credit. And then by 2006, the price went up to $4 per credit. And it collapsed to 20 cents. You can go and look at the markets, Chicago Climate Exchange today, and see what the price is. For 20 cents, you can't get a glass of water. How do you expect farmer to do it? If the market is not ready, and we say, well, what can we do? Market is not ready. How do you expect farmers to do it? Therefore, we have to, until the market, I realize, eventually market has to be a solution. But until the market is ready, you find another way to pay farmers. Societal value of farmer, not the market-driven value, because the market doesn't exist at the moment. Societal values, what are the equivalent value that society get when they sequester carbon, they mitigate drought, they mitigate flood, they improve biodiversity. What is the price of that? And various prices. Right now, my estimate is $50 per credit, CO2 equivalent. Society, how do you pay then if there is no market? You pay them on the same way as we paid for CRP, Conservation Reserve Program, 1987 Farm Bill of the US. How did they set aside highly erodible land? Satellite image. If the farmer were not cultivating, if the land has gone back to nature, pay them what they would have got if they were growing corn, soybean. So I know there are many people who say, oh, we must have a measurement, monitoring, verification. Think about it. If a farmer has 10 acre and you insist on having 10 samples at different point within an acre to get, that's 100 sample per acre, and you got 4 acres, and they got 400, and it's my lab price is $20 per sample. Who is going to get the money for that? So it's a monkey wrench when you say measurement, monitoring. As a soil scientist, yes, that's a great thing, but not from farmer's point of view. It's a land use practice-based payment system based on satellite imagery. Once in a while, you go check the value somewhere else, plus minus 5%, but don't put monkey wrenches. If you want to pay, pay it, and pay it properly, justly, fairly, transparently. I want to mention one more thing. I have mentioned respect for agriculture profession. Somebody made a mention in the previous section, when students fail everywhere else, they come to agriculture. That's correct. If a graduate in agriculture now, I teach them, you know what salary they get? $30,000, if they're lucky. If there's a graduate in IT, they get $80,000. If they're a graduate in remote sensing or other thing, 100,000. If a graduate in MBA, 150,000. Graduate in medical college, $250,000. 10 times the salary difference. Agriculture is not respected at any level. And this has to change amongst all of us. How many of us are encouraging our children to go to study agriculture? We also know, go study medical, go study engineering, go study. This mindset, unless it changes, if we do not become the change we want it to happen, it will not happen. And the last sentence I want to make is, when a person is hungry, God dare not appear in any avatar other than a loaf of bread made from grains grown on a healthy soil. That's the only respect that a hungry man will give it to God.
Just a small comment on carbon markets, but definitely we had good news at the beginning of this COP regarding 6.4, and this is something that may open the way to a faster deployment of Article 6. There's one lesson we had from the previous MDL, is that if you look at all the sectors for mitigation, and in particular the methodologies that were ascribed, if you see the agriculture sector is quite small. There are just a couple of methodologies that were agreed, in particular on agricultural waste. So I see a huge opportunity there to develop the methodologies, in particular for Latin America and the Caribbean, that we can develop those methodologies using the information that we have on these ecosystems on our land, and to deliver on a reasonable approach that can subscribe for these additional carbon credits to be deployed as a way of production, not just the traditional conservation that we have, for example, in the forest area, but how can we do mitigation under active production areas that definitely has a management that also does conservation. So I believe it's a huge opportunity, and we also need to have that discussion and bring those methodologies to the ground and start making those projects happen and deliver on these mitigation results as well.
Thank you. That question precisely is a mind twister. It spins your mind to see where and how you can convince farmers to help mitigate, but there's no benefits financially to him. I think Colombia in some way or shape collect taxes, I think, and you can offset that by carbon credits. But I don't believe anybody else is doing. I love the idea of a Colombian who visited our farms and said, what you need to do, Minister, is to have someone certify the farms in Belize as being silvipastoral, green farms. I love it. I love the idea. I love the concept. But how will the farmer benefit from this? If there's a farmer who's doing it, It costs him to plant mataraton all along the perimeter, the gliricidia. It's a legume. It helps the soil, fixes nitrogen into the soil. We can do other legumes. There's a cost to it. But my neighbor does not do it. And when we sell cows, the price is the same. So this is where my mind goes into a twist. Where do we start? How do we move towards that direction? And moving in that direction has to be now. If we are going to face, in the very near future, serious problems like we've never seen before, the time to start is now. I am convinced. My farmers are convinced. The Belizean farmers are convinced that that's the way to go. Planting trees, investing in leguminous plants, Lucina, Leucocephala, get it into the field. But there's a cost for it. I would love to see our farms being certified. There's no certifying agency yet that I know of that can go out and say your farm is certified, that has that authority. There's none. But the time to start is yesterday.
Well, your question is like an onion, because every time that I think that I will answer this, then I pick something from the colleague, the esteemed panelist here, and then it gets even more complicated. But let's start from the basic. And you said it, who benefit from the carbon market? Definitely at the moment, not the small size farmer, not the family farmer. That so far are excluded. Who owns the carbon? Because is the landowner or is the farmer? So then we are talking also of a land tenure system that needs to be thought. I mean, your 30 years approach is great, but in a lot of countries, farmers, young farmers and women farmers especially, are struggling to have something that go beyond 2 years. And how you can invest in the land if you don't have a continuity of it. That's like investment in the private sector. If you don't own your factory, you are not going to put new machinery in there, so your space, because then tomorrow you can be kicked out. On top of that, what are the collateral that the financial institution will accept from farmer for a loan? Are the financial institution ready to take that challenge in an uncertain situation? So I see that the approach can be a multi-stakeholder platform with all the people around the table, with the farmer organization as your interface towards this multitude of farmers, because at least you create node where you can discuss. Because you can reach each and every one farmer, but it's like MMRV measuring, and you cannot transform farmer in some sort of human sensor. Either they produce food, either they measure things, either they are steward of biodiversity, either they are steward of the environment. There are a bit too many tasks, and my grandfather used to say, it's the only task that you pay, the one that you're expecting to get something out of it. So that's, I would say, all of us, we really need to rethink today, because the problem of yesterday, as you rightfully say, Minister, that we are not ready because the market is uncertain on that. But there is a space for this renewed alliance of how we invest on farmers and how we make them, again, economic actor, respecting their community. I still wonder, and I conclude on this, what happened if we look, I mean, someone maybe a bit from my age going up, if we're talking about healthy food, in the 50s and 60s, the image would be on advertises farmer food. Today is products that are not coming from land as an image of healthiness. Is making farmers sexy the solution? Maybe, but is real agriculture for us as WFO the key angle? If we know where the food comes from, if we know the effort, the sweat the farmer plays in the work that they do, the proud on their product, that we are already breaking this very strange situation that we are today, that healthy food is no more coming from family farmer, but is coming from somewhere else. That's also the covenant with the land that we have broken, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Your onion comment makes me think about something. Jack Bobo, in his presentation to the Ministers of Agriculture and also the farm federations who joined us, we had Keith represent the World Farmers Organization. he talked about the fact that consumers have never cared more about their food, and they've never known less. So that's kind of scary. And then farmers are being asked to do so many things and get so many certifications, and now carbon, they're just, they're burdened with all these things, and it's not simple. And there's an old expression from the Navy, and it's been in political campaigns, et cetera. It's keep it simple, stupid. So I'm going to ask each of you, probably for the last round, and then maybe ask you each to think about maybe questions you want to ask the other. This panel is a dialogue about the future of agriculture. In just a minute, 2 minutes, what do you see as the technological innovation, the new technique, the new trend? What is going to change agriculture in order to achieve those goals of feeding 2 billion more people by 2050 and taking care of our planet? We'll start with you so you don't have to listen and get triggered in a variety of different ways. You'll be the first to influence everyone else. Andrea.
Thank you. Well, I was hoping this time to have a bit more time to think. I imagine two things. First, an innovation that is farmer-driven and farmer-centered, and accessible solution, not one solution fits all, but solution that comes from the experience of the farmer, from the context of the country, under the umbrella of a government that meaningfully engage with their farmers component of the society, family farmer, because they are also the value of the community. There will be a presidium on the land, especially what has been mentioned at the beginning of an innovation trend. We need farmers that remains there, but we don't need to remain there as some sort of convicted to the land. It need to be profitable. They need to be respected. They need to be what they always been, proud member of their community. That's what I envision. So a grow on the respect on farmers, accessible and farmer-driven innovation solution that are locally guided.
Yeah, you're right. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution here. This is an integrated set of solutions. And I think that analyzing the situation of climate change, sustainable practices, climate-smart practices, combined with technology, combined with AI, combined with legislation, proper training, research and development will have to be the order of the day, or we will not survive the future in agriculture.
For me, will be alliances, as was we previously discussed, and again, academia, political, the farmers, the financial sector, many others coming together. Second, building from what we have in nature and in our land, and in particular Latin America and the Caribbean, that sounds as a very strategic issue for the future. What do we have there? How can we protect that? And how can we build better production that is more resilient, more mitigation, also biodiversity? And again, from the financial sector, how do we innovate in that ecosystems of alliances and that green opportunities that we see in front of us?
I think farmers are the greatest stakeholders in this whole process. And we must make sure that they feel that they are respected, that we value their contributions. Therefore, whatever policies we have, they'll be farmer-centric, that they really know that we mean it. And $100 billion that I mentioned compared to $1 billion that was mentioned at Paris Accord in 2015, I think 60% of that should come from oil exporting countries, including our host country, obviously. Because it's like smoking, people are getting rewarded by the company that sold them the smoke. Now the earth is getting fever, so obviously oil exporting, I would say 60%. 20% or so industry, agro-industry, and 20%, 15% us, consumers. We must be the first one to lead the path. Yes, we are willing to pay. As I mentioned yesterday, each one of us is a culprit and a victim. And a solution lies on our attitude. So, farmer-centric approach and make sure carbon becomes a commodity. It's grown on the land just like we grow wheat and soybean and corn and beef and poultry, and we sell it in the market. Carbon is also a commodity that brings them another income stream. That's the only way to help.
Thank you, Dr. Lal. I want to now open this up to each of you to think about. You've heard your fellows on this panel, and maybe there's something that you would like to ask each of them. I mean, I see Dr. Lal with his Ohio State tie, and I think, are you going to finally beat Michigan this year? And I think you probably will. I won't say that to my niece. But, you know, I'd like to see if there's anything that you would like to ask one of your fellow panelists, and maybe have a short round robin with each of you talking to each other about something that you heard, something that you think is important that they mentioned. And if not, we'll ask the audience to, we have time for some audience to ask questions. So, gentlemen.
Well, I have one for everyone, because I somehow skipped the part of private sector, the important role that should have. So, and probably because around the table, you are more the one of the private sector, but you are moderator and not panelist. So that is an important component that we think that also in this multi-stakeholder platform should be there. But farmer value also stability and predictability on all the aspects, from a governance side, financial, and so also to a certain extent research. So how you envision, what you can do for stability and predictability towards farming. And it's an open question to everyone.
Yes. On the issue of stability, definitely the financial sector has a saying on that and can support the whole value chain. When we see the issue of production, we see definitely the issue of climate impacts and the issue of prices driving instability in the farmer production. So definitely we can work on financial solutions, and some of the ideas that we've been dealing with in terms of climate is, for example, guarantees. How can we develop a guarantee scheme that can somehow work together with the pair of the climate and prices issues that, for example, if you have to do investment and you're indebted, how can we work with these two indexes in order to, the way that the debt behaves can also support on those moments that are more harsh and can also be more active in those moments that you have more income. So in a way, we definitely can work on these innovative solutions that can provide for stability for producers in the way that they are threatened by these changes and these risky impacts.
I mentioned that collapse of the Chicago Climate Exchange from $6 to 20 cents. How do you get the confidence of the farmers back? And right now, at that time when the market collapsed, you know who gained? The traders, not the farmers. And now we are going back, the trading companies are mushrooming everywhere. My company is better for you than your company, somebody else's company. And the farmer don't trust anybody. So the question is, they don't even trust the researchers. What are you talking about carbon credit? We know what happened in 2006. So how to get their confidence back that, yes, we mean business. We want to give you respect. We want to give you your money that you deserve. That's really the key question.
I think I'm done. I think I'm done. But I like the concept of considering carbon is a commodity to bring stability and prices. That we don't have a repeat of 2006. How do we get there is another question. Well, the issue of migration is regional, all the way from South America to the US. And it's a question, I believe, of political instability in certain countries and policies of another country. I recall 5 years ago, you couldn't get into the US. And 2 years ago, everybody got into the US. So it's a matter of a policy of the country where migrants go to. I have a small village in my district that 25% left. Esposa, niños, everyone left and sent back photographs of the McDonald's somewhere in the USA. So the policy of a country was allow them to get in. Recently it stopped. So it's a matter of policies. It's a matter of political instability in certain countries in South America. And that has led to serious problems. The Mexican sugar industry could not complete its harvest because of lack of manpower. In Belize today, you cannot find manpower. Unemployment rate is at 6%. And that 6% is because they don't want to work. Simple as that. And there's that component of population in all countries. So it does create a problem. Not only that, but they move along with diseases. In the case of screwworms, the first case I believe was found that came from the Darien into Panama was a child that has screwworms in the head. So this is what happens when you start have migration. So there's something that has to be done. I think it's slowed down in Belize at this time. I don't know if there'll be another boom in the near future.
Well, there are several types of immigrants. There are political immigrants, and there are climate refugees, and there are soil refugees. So I think we have to find out what's the cause, and that cause really varies amongst different regions. If it is a soil refugees, we need a minimum of 0.25 hectare per capita of good land to meet all the basic necessities per person. Many countries where I would call soil refugees, 0.07 hectare per capita land availability. That is what is causing the rural poverty. And somewhere, if we were to focus on agriculture, value addition, that will make agro-industry processing within the same community as a source of income for young generation. So we are still agricultural centric, but rather than selling corn or wheat, you're selling a byproduct. Its storage value, its market value, like yam, cassava. Cassava could be sold as tapioca rather than cassava tuber. So it creates job opportunity for young. So value addition of agriculture is really one option.
Can I, Minister? You have to. Can I? Just one word very quick. First, farmers believe other farmers. So success comes on the adoption if farmers see a success done by other farmers. To do so, there are things that unfortunately that were there in the past and they are struggling today. So extension service, public or state extension service is struggling everywhere. And I also know your country, Malawi, a country I love so much, how it's struggling in these last 2 seasons for an alternate weather condition that have frustrated even the basic production of corn. So extension service is a challenge. Farmer organization, if they are supported to grow, can play a role in showcasing success story. So I think that the two things that need to be invested are either a more structured public-private partnership for rebuild extension service, operate maybe within the umbrella of the farmer organization with farmer fee school, with technical example. So I think that in that part can work to show what you have done, and I take your example because it's based on innovation, and showcase to other farmers, maybe with a support, either with a public-private actor or with a farmer organization. But I think that stays in farmer trust other farmer when they see thrive and succeed.
Well, thank you, Andrea. Did you have a question? No, you're just signaling to someone else. So, if you haven't figured out by now, I like to talk about Norman Borlaug, the father of the Green Revolution. You're talking about farmers trusting other farmers. When Norman Borlaug went up to the Yaqui Valley, violating his agreements with the government of Mexico and the Rockefeller Foundation, because that's where they actually grow wheat, so he needs to, experiment on his new wheat there. He started wandering around the valley, and some of the Mexican farmers started looking at him and saying, "What is this gringo doing?" And eventually they started coming to his field days, and they started gaining trust in him, and they started using his techniques and his technologies, and guess what? He was successful, and farmers trusted other farmers, and eventually that led to the Green Revolution. So, as a final comment to wrap this panel up, we're talking about the future of agriculture. Innovation's an important part of that. In one minute, each of you talk about how you see, are you optimistic? Are you bullish on the future of agriculture? And can it achieve that huge task to feed 2 billion more people and take care of the land? 1 minute and we'll close up. And you're passing it down to Ratan.
It's about 60 years since then, and we need to rethink, revisit. He promoted dwarf varieties, short straw, more grain, less root system, more irrigation, more fertilizer, more production. Excellent. Yield got quadrupled another. Now our soils are degrading, climate change is happening, water pollution is a very serious problem, pesticide and herbicide use is too much, we want to produce more from less. I would like to have a plant, if Dr. Borlaug is allowed, sir, I would like to have a plant which has also tall system, deep root system, resistant to decomposition, resistant to lodging. I don't care if it produces 10% less yield, but it produces more biomass. More importantly, I want plant to be able to tell me through molecular based signals, look, I'm dry, I'm thirsty, I'm short of nitrogen, a grasshopper is biting me, so that I can intervene. So I think Dr. Borlaug saved the world, but we need to rethink in the current situation. Climate change, soil degradation, more resources, a lot of population. How can we do agriculture that produces more from less? He emphasized more fertilizer, more irrigation, more plant, more variety, less biomass. We need to revisit.
Are you optimistic? So, what you were talking about, kind of a new change away from productivity to a climate smart, productive system. That's happening now. It has a long ways to go, but there are farmers, small farmers too, big farmers are all implementing this, that are using precision agriculture to do exactly what you said. We need to get that to the small farmers. It can be done, but it takes investment. It takes Nacho to, open up that wallet and help us do that. Nacho. I don't like that term either, but yeah. I think that's much better. Nacho? Thank you, Ignacio.
COVID-19 taught us that lesson. You can live without television, you can live without a car, you can live without a watch, you can live, but you cannot live without food. So we've got to be optimistic on this. Not being optimistic is natural death.
Last word, Andrea.
Yes. Well, I draw my optimism from two equally distant things. First is like our friend from Malawi, young farmers that are popping out, young people that believe to go into farming because there is a business there that can be done. And in WFO we have a program that is called Gymnasium, which we every year we have a cohort of young farmers from all over the world that are exposed to debate and event like this and beyond. And there is a vibrant interest. Despite the fact that farming community is aging, there are young farmers that come to that job not because it's a family tradition, but because they see business. And what is more optimistic than someone that believes that can get a better situation than his parents through agriculture. Second is what you mentioned about COVID, that you are right. I mean, I draw optimism from that terrible moment in which in unexpected place in the world we have seen empty shelves. Not because there were no production, but because we broke the system of distribution and access. So a new healthy way to redefine and think in different countries what really is food security, which is not autarky, but is strategic and smart thinking of how I manage my production system, my food system.
So, Andrea, you talked about an aging average age of farmers. So a couple weeks ago, I was on a farm, coffee farm in the mountains of Costa Rica, precision agriculture, digital, drip education, drip irrigation, fertigation, satellite, everything, small farm. And I talked to the young farmer saying, he was with his father and he started talking about his father was so old he couldn't do all this stuff. And of course, his father's younger than I am, and so I was rather upset by that. But, I think seeing that farm and knowing that innovation is out there in, a very remote part of Costa Rica gives me a lot of optimism for youth and including his young father to be able to implement these kind of tools in order to do exactly what you mentioned, Dr. Law. So with that, I'm optimistic as well. I'd like to ask all of you to join me in an applause for this great panel. And I think we're stopping early, so I want to get some credit for that. We'll see you tomorrow at the Home of Sustainable Agriculture. All right.